A man throws a rose in a puddle and walks away. As flashbacks of a man engaging in combat are shown, the rose slowly turns red. He's shot, he bleeds, but he smirks. So how did our space cowboy Spike get here? Rewind to space. Two bounty hunters, Spike and his partner Jet, discuss their next target, Asimov Solsensan, a man that deals drugs around the asteroids. The man was in a battle with his syndicate and an enemy syndicate when he killed all his members and ran away. He's hiding in Tijuana with his girlfriend and has a huge bounty on him, and Jet and Spike are to hunt him. In an old bar, Asimov and his girlfriend arrive. Asimov offers to sell the bartender a drug. To prove its authenticity, Asimov uses the drug. His eyes instantly turn red, but that's when a group of gun men crash into the inn and begin shooting everywhere. But when they try to shoot Asimov, he escapes the bullets and kills his enemies. In a different area, Spike meets an old person who tells him that a red-eyed coyote will appear in the town's north, and he will meet a woman who will target him, leading to death. At the inn, Jet enters and meets two men looking for Asimov. He threatens them to tell him everything regarding the dealer. Spike is traveling in his fighter when its tank becomes empty, and he takes a stop and goes to the washroom. There, he meets Asimov. On his way out, he pushes against Asimov's girlfriend carrying food and helps her pick up the dropped food. Though, he picks up some food for himself, and Asimov's girlfriend smiles when she sees it. Spike refills his fighter's tank while Asimov's girlfriend talks to him, but she soon finds out he's a bounty hunter. Suddenly, Asimov attacks him, but his girlfriend stops him from killing, and they take off on his spaceship. While Spike is on the ground, Jet comes and says it's impossible to catch Asimov. That's because Asimov took off after stealing illegal eye drops made by the Syndicate, and whoever tries to catch him dies because he uses these drops called Bloody Eye. That's when Spike tells Jet he stole the drug from his pocket and he's at the town's north end. Asimov and his girlfriend stop at a bar again, and Asimov tries to trade Bloody Eye to a man, but he realizes he's lost it. It turns out that man was Spike. Spike destroys the drug, and they both begin to fight. While fighting, Asimov's girlfriend aims to shoot Spike, but that's when the Syndicate begins attacking, and the two attempt to escape. Asimov's girlfriend's hit by a bullet, and the drugs she's been hiding begin to fall out. While Spike is fighting against the Syndicate, Jet arrives and stops it, but Asimov and his girlfriend take off in a fighter. Spike follows them in his fighter, and Asimov again uses the drug on himself. Asimov's girlfriend realizes they cannot run away anymore and shoots Asimov. Right after, their fighter is shot and she dies. Afterwards, Spike and Jet safely return to their spaceship. Three gunmen are attacking a man named Abdul Hakim, but he beats them and escapes with a suitcase. Jet and Spike watch a show called Big Shot, where they learn about a serial pet thief, Abdul Hakim, who stole a test dog from a research facility and has an $8 million bounty on him. Afterwards, Spike talks to a doctor who gives him Hakim's post-plastic surgery image. Hakim decides to meet someone in 6 hours on call to sell him a valuable item. Hakim enters a shop when he gets into a fight with a man. In the meantime, another man picks up Hakim's suitcase and runs away. When he opens the suitcase, he sees an animal in it. Jet and Spike reach the city, and Jet leaves to hunt down their target in his fighter. In the city, the men from the research facility continue to look for Abdul Hakim. Spike visits a shop and asks a man about a shady pet shop, for which he suggests he pay a visit at the Animal Treasure off of Kyphon Road. At the pet shop, the man who had stolen the suitcase visits to sell off the animal. Spike also reaches the shop but confuses him for being Abdul Hakim. He asks the woman to check the suitcase, but she finds a Welsh corgi who's not worth anything. Spike thinks he made a mistake as the dog's worthless, so he walks away from the shop. As Spike leaves, Hakim reaches the shop and tries to take the corgi, but it runs away. A chase begins with Hakim following the dog, the research facility members following them, and Spike also running after Hakim. At the bridge, Spike and Hakim face off with each other. Hakim is confused about why he's after the dog, but Spike tells him he's after Hakim instead because he has a large bounty on him. They both start fighting, but the dog jumps to a ship. Hakim follows the dog but gets separated as he falls on the ship while a dog jumps to Spike, who's in the water. Spike takes the dog to his spaceship while the research facility members continue to search for their data dog. Meanwhile, Spike goes out with the corgi so that Abdul Hakim will come to him on its search. Abdul Hakim talks to his dealer on call and suggests postponing their meeting, but he refuses. He meets a fortune teller to help locate his dog while Jet tracks him. The researchers then use a dog whistle to find the dog, and all dogs, including the corgi, begin running after it. Hakeem is told the item he's looking for is nearby, and that's when he sees the dogs running and begins running after them. He steals a car from a wedding, and the researcher attempts to catch the corgi, but he escapes. Hakeem catches it instead, but Spike is after Hakeem too. The researchers begin shooting his car, and the corgi escapes from him to Spike again. The Big Shot show then shows that the police catch Hakeem, but the dog is still missing, and it turns out the dog is with Spike and Jet. In a shop, an attractive woman enters and fires at 3 men searching for her. The men escape, but in an instant she's attacked again and cornered by a group of gunmen. After her capture, the woman is taken to a man who threatens to send her to the police if she doesn't join his establishment. Jet and Spike visit a casino, and the pilot tells Spike to wait while he gambles. But Spike decides to go and play a game as well. Spike sits down to gamble, and the dealer is the same lady now working with the establishment, but she confuses him for someone else. The lady was told to be a dealer for a blackjack game where the target would play, and she'd have to help him cheat, and at the end, he'll hand her over the dealer's chip. Spike's the last one at the game, but when the game ends, Spike takes the dealer's chip with him. Spike's casually walking when a flustered man accidentally hits him, and 2 chips fall from his pocket. He quickly walks away with one of the chips while Spike keeps the other chip. The lady runs to Spike and asks him why he didn't give her the chip as planned, but Spike is confused and loudly says she is cheated, which causes chaos amongst the crowd. The lady walks away while men approach Spike and he gets into a fight with them. Meanwhile, the lady uses her bracelet and sets off in her fighter, but Spike and Jet escape the casino and get on top of her fighter. On the other hand, a group of men beat the man who initially had the chip and decided to put a reward on the lady so they could get the chip. But Spike and Jet capture the woman. She suggests to give the chip to Gordon, and he'd give any amount of money in exchange. But they ignore and lock her, where she secretly takes out a communication device. Jet and Spike hear their favorite show, Big Shot, where they learn about a $6 million bounty on the lady, whose name is Faye Valentine. At the same time, Faye contacts her boss and informs him about the chip. Spike and Jet return to her, but she quickly hides the device. They tell her they'll give her to the police for a reward, but she talks them into letting her go to the toilet. Jet and Spike's ship is hit by Faye's boss's ship, and the boss asks them to return the chip. Jet tells them that this chip is a special key to unlock every protection code, and he'd give it to him for $30 million. He agrees, and Spike sets out to give him the chip. A man is out on the ship who shows the money in a box, but when Spike sends him the chip, he shoots at him. Spike dodges the bullet and Faye escapes by breaking out in her fighter. Spike hits the gunman and takes back his chip. Faye greets Spike in her fighter and takes the money case. Her boss's spaceship fires at her, but she counterattacks and runs away. Spike safely returns to his ship, and the next day, he and Jet go back to the casino with the chip. Faye is stuck in space as she's out of fuel, and that's when she encounters a broken fighter. Meanwhile, Jet and Spike are dining at a restaurant where Jet identifies a man named Morgan who has a reward on him. At the same time, a woman with her 5 sons walks to Morgan and shoots him and everyone else. As they're leaving, Jet remembers the woman having a $25 million reward on her, so he captures her, but she's confident of her return. Going back, Faye goes to the broken fighter whose rider tells her to take his suitcase to the ISSP as his last words. In their spaceship, Jet finds the woman to be Twinkle Maria Murdoch, the leader of the Space Warriors, a group protecting endangered species. The group initially had positive goals until she became the leader and made it a dangerous syndicate. Unfortunately, Jet found out that the Ganymede government canceled the reward on Twinkle just yesterday. While Faye excitedly opens the mysterious suitcase, she's underwhelmed to see an item she can identify. On the other hand, the Space Warriors threaten the government to execute a dangerous plan that they're working on, which forces the government to cancel the reward on Twinkle and follow their demands. Jet's surprised to find the restaurant attack isn't on record either, and the woman laughs, knowing they're helpless against her. At the same time, their ship gets near Faye's ship, and she requests them to help her. They capture her, but Spike finds the item Faye found, but is also confused about its use. Meanwhile, the government is looking for a virus they've lost. They get information about Twinkle's kidnappers. As Spike struggles to figure out the item, Jet talks to an old friend who informs him that the Space Warriors have created a dangerous virus called Monkey Business, which turns humans into monkeys, and due to this threat, the government must do as the Space Warriors say. Figuring out no other way to handle this, Twinkle is released by Jet. The government discusses plans to monitor Twinkle when she suddenly contacts them and says she'll punish them for not prohibiting the hunting of Ganymede rats. In space, the government identifies their target, but just then, Twinkle announces on TV her plan to release the virus on Ganymede, and their targeted ship was a decoy. Twinkle releases the missile, and Jet learns the reward is reverted on Twinkle, but they must stop the missile first. Spike exits the gate and hits 2 of the 3 missiles released. He misses the 3rd one, but just then, Faye, who has again escaped, contacts Spike and offers her help. However, she misses it as well. The government then begins to close the gate to prevent the virus, and Spike and Faye hardly make it back inside, while Twinkle and her sons remain trapped out in space. There's panic inside Twinkle's ship when suddenly, an item's released from Twinkle's pocket, which Spike had kept there. The item contains the monkey business virus, so it breaks, turning Twinkle and her sons into monkeys. As usual, Spike and Jet return to their ship penniless, but Faye's there with them and tells them we'll get it next time, which confuses Spike and Jet. An agreement is settled between the Red Dragon Syndicate and their opposing syndicate, but his fighter blows off when the syndicate's executive leaves. Afterward, the Red Dragon's executive is also killed by a mysterious man. It's announced on TV that there's a 28 million Wulong bounty on Red Dragon's executive, Mao Yenrai, and Spike gets into an argument with Jet about going after Mao. Spike asks Jet about his arm injury, but he doesn't say much. Faye returns to the spaceship after shopping, and Spike leaves in his fighter, despite Jet asking him not to. A man contacts Jet to give him information about Mao, but only Faye is there. Faye follows the information and reaches a fancy hall where she talks about a man in the box seat to get inside. Meanwhile, Jet finds surprising news about Mao Yenrai. Spike's walking down the street when he meets an old acquaintance, Annie, who's surprised to find him alive and agrees to give him the information needed regarding Mao. On the other hand, Faye is caught by the Syndicate as they have all her information. She's taken to the hall's singing show where she sees a dead body, and next to her is Vicious, Mao's murderer. Spike's given guns and bullets by Annie, and she tells him not to get involved with Vicious, but of course, she knows Spike won't listen to her. Spike returns to the spaceship, where Jet tells him Mao is already dead and the bounty is a trap, but Spike knows it and is still going along with it. Jet warns Spike that he lost his arm for being overspirited, but just then, Faye contacts them, telling her she's been caught and her location. Spike knows what he wants to do, and so he reaches the location, which is a church. Spike meets his old enemy, Vicious, and during their bitter conversation, Faye arrives as a captive. Spike shoots at her captivator, which starts a full shootout between Spike and the Syndicate members. Spike gets shot while Faye escapes the church and contacts Jet for help. Wounded, Spike gets into a fight with Vicious, who reminds him of the past they've shared. Vicious becomes angry that Spike's alive and stabs him. Simultaneously, Spike shoots him. Vicious throws Spike outside of the church, and Spike's past flashes in front of him before he falls to the ground. While unconscious, Spike has a memory of waking up wounded by the humming of a lady and asking her to sing for him. In reality, Spike wakes up to Faye's humming, who tells him he's been unconscious for 3 days. Spike asks her to unbandage his mouth and tells her she's tone deaf, which makes her so angry she hits him with a pillow. There's a creepy eye surgery going on, but it's actually just Spike's dream, who wakes up in a nightclub where a child is playing the harp. On the ship, Faye finds only dog food in the fridge, and Ein's happily waiting to be fed, but Faye eats his food instead. That's simply gross and sad. Jet and Spike identify a man named Giraffe at the club with a 3 million Wulong bounty, but they see another bounty hunter at the club, so Jet goes to divert him from Giraffe. Meanwhile, Spike follows Giraffe, who's after the harp-playing child and his parent. Giraffe enters the child's hotel, and Spike rides his fighter to catch him. Giraffe points a gun at the child and asks to return the man to the wheelchair, Zebra, but he's shot and thrown outside the hotel room. Spike catches him on his fighter, but Giraffe's close to death. In his last words, he warns Spike not to be fooled by his appearance, to help him, and gives him a stone. Spike returns to the spaceship, and Jet tries to analyze the stone but fails. The following day, Jet meets with the same bounty hunter from the club who tells him that Giraffe was after Wen's father, Zebra. The two are old acquaintances from a self-defense group. A decade ago, Zebra and Giraffe were trying to reclaim an old facility, but Zebra went missing and Giraffe was kidnapped. Spike went to the club again and followed Wen and Zebra to a warehouse. At the same time, Jet finds a 30-year-old article with the same child, Wen, in it. Shortly after, Spike asks Wen to come with him, thinking he's the child Giraffe wanted him to help, but Wen points his gun at him instead. In a flashback, Wen is a child playing the harp on Earth when an explosion reaches the Earth, causing everyone to die, but Wen survives. Wen tells Spike that after the explosion at the hyperspace gate, a condition happened in Wen's body, making it unable for him to age or die, and Zebra had snuck into his lab, so he used him as a parent. Wen asks Spike for the stone and begins shooting at him. Spike shoots at his hand, so he loses the gun and hides. Spike again shoots at Wen's head, hitting him, but Wen's body is gone when he goes to check. Spike takes Zebra's body to their spaceship, where he sees in his memories that Wen killed Giraffe. It was found that the ring had a lot of energy, which was created by the twists in hyperspace. The same energy had broken during the explosion, which caused Wen not to age. Spike takes the gem and puts it in his gun. Meanwhile, Wen kills a taxi driver and drives off in his taxi. Spike identifies the taxi and shoots at it, causing it to explode, but Wen walks out unharmed and stands in front of him. Spike dodges Wen's bullet and shoots the gem bullet into his head, hitting him. Wen's body instantly rots to his actual age, and he expresses his relief at finally being able to die before his eyes close. A truck spaceship ridden by a woman named VT in a spaceship enters her workplace as her shift starts. Her coworker comes and challenges her to tell her her real name, but she fails. At a diner, VT enters and sees bounty hunters gathered because there is a hint that a bounty named Decker will come to the place. Meanwhile, Spike is also at the diner, but is hungover and whines to Faye that his red dragon tattoo is the only clue about Decker. Faye is sitting at another restaurant when she sees a man with a red tattoo. She thinks he's Decker and points a gun at him. On the other hand, VT saves a server at the diner from being harassed by bounty hunters. Faye tells the man that his dragon-shaped tattoo proves he's Decker, but another man listening to her hears her and runs away. Faye sees the tattoo on the other man's arm and realizes he's the real Decker, and the man in front of her has an eel tattoo, so she runs after him. VT is fighting against the bounty hunters at the bar, and Spike begins beating them up. Meanwhile, Faye finally catches up to Decker, but he throws an explosive at her, which blows up her fighter. Spike returns inside the diner after throwing out the bounty hunters. VT calls all bounty hunters to be scum and offers Spike a drink, not knowing he's also a bounty hunter. Another of VT's friends enters and challenges them to tell her her name in exchange for money. Spike also asks to guess her name, but Jet calls and tells him to go after Decker. Listening to this, VT gets angry at him. When Spike walks out, he sees his fighter has been vandalized, but VT agrees to give him and his friend Faye a ride to their spaceship. VT's in her space truck when a friend calls and says that he's been in a hit and run by a truck with the goddess Sarasvati on it, a description similar to Decker's truck. VT contacts her friends and discovers that the truck was spotted near Linus Mines. VT finds Decker's truck and begins chasing him. She then contacts Spike and tells him that Decker is going towards Linus Mines, so Faye and Spike go after them. At the mine, Decker throws an explosive at VT, but her truck remains intact. However, Decker's truck hits on an explosive in the mine. Spike and Faye enter the mine but see that the explosive has killed Decker. They unite with VT and carefully try to go out from the exit, but an explosion causes the exit to close. Desperate to get out, Faye takes an explosive from Decker's truck to create an opening. Meanwhile, Spike gets out of his fighter to join VT. However, he begins falling into space, but uses his gun to push him towards VT, who gives him a hand and gets him inside. Faye throws the explosive, and an opening is created through which they escape. Inside VT's truck, Spike sees a watch given to VT from her husband and finds out her name is Victoria Terpskyre. She's the wife of the legendary bounty hunter, Terpskyre. On a flight to Venus, 3 men attack the plane and tell everyone to put their hands behind their heads. Spike is asleep, so one of the men attacks him, but Spike beats him up, and Faye puts the other hijacker to sleep. Spike finally gets some income after handing the 3 hijackers to the police. After seeing him, one of the men from the plane follows him and begins begging him to teach him his incredible moves. Spike keeps saying no, but the man is too persistent and doesn't take no for an answer. Hence, that begins Spike's teaching lessons, as he teaches him some moves and how to control power. However, The man suddenly hands over an item to Spike and runs away, telling Spike to meet him at the cathedral. Spike returns home, where Jet tells him about a bounty on a thief, Picaro Calvino, and his crew, including Rocco Bonaro, the same man he met earlier. The crew stole gray ash, a remedy of Venus sickness worth millions, and as you may have guessed, that's what Rocco had given to Spike. Faye suggests keeping gray ash, but Jet decides not to get involved, and Spike leaves to look for Rocco. When Spike enters Rocco's home, his sister finds him suspicious at first, but then calms down, thinking Spike's Rocco's friend. Rocco had escaped from his crew members earlier, but they all come inside and corner him while he's at the washroom. Meanwhile, Spike's told by Rocco's sister that she's blind due to Venus sickness, and Rocco wants to cure her sickness. She shows Spike a box he'd sent, and Spike sees a hidden packet he keeps in that box. Faye searches for Picaro as she enters a bar and asks around for him, where a man tells her he remembers him. Spike goes to the spaceship and asks about gray ash seed, which Jet tells him is extremely expensive. Spike doesn't tell him that he has it, but he has the seeds he took previously in his hand. Meanwhile, Rocco is cornered by Picaro and his men, who ask him about the gray ash and beat him up. Rocco goes to the cathedral, where Spike is already present. Spike tells Rocco he knows about gray ash, and Rocco points his gun at him, figuring out he's a bounty hunter. But instead, he asks him to run away, or he'll be killed. Picaro and his crew surround them, and a shootout begins by them. Faye also joins the party to get her hands on the bounty. Picaro attempts to hit Rocco, but Rocco uses the trick taught by Spike and throws him down on the ground. But the gray ash falls and withers, and Rocco is shot. Faye captures Picaro, and Spike checks up on Rocco, who asks him for a final favor, which is the seeds in the music box. Spike reassures him that he'll care for Stella and leaves to find a doctor. A few days later, Spike visits Stella in the hospital, whose eyes are beginning to recover due to the gray ash left by Rocco. She asks Spike about Rocco, but realizes he's dead and she can never see him. On his way back, Spike buys a fruit. The pollen from Venus's floating plants falls from the sky like snow. A satellite feels lonely, so it randomly begins drawing images on the land. A young girl on Earth listens to the weather news and hacks Bebop's computer system. On the Bebop, the bounty hunters hear on the news about the land paintings. The officials assume the land paintings are being made by a hacker using the satellite, and an 8 million wulong bounty is even put on the culprit. Jet and Faye decide to team up to find the hacker, as Spike finds hacking too complicated. On the news, it's announced that the hacked satellite is old and its access code has been lost, hindering the investigation. On Earth, the young girl called Radical Edward is visited by the police for arrest, but Ed hacks their spaceship and explodes it. The next day, Faye and Jet set off to find the hacker by locating signals and gathering information. While Ed hacks the Bebop computer, she figures out they're looking for the land picture criminal. Faye sees too many signals while Jet talks to many people on Earth to get Ed's information, but everyone gives different information. Some think it's a child, while others think it's an alien. On the other hand, Ed tries to locate the satellite when he gets connected to it and figures out that it's been acting independently, without any hacker involved. He names the satellite MPU and befriends it. Faye and Jet return without proper information, but Ed suddenly contacts them on their computer by hacking it. She tells them that the satellite's AI has been drawing the pictures on its own will, and since it cannot be accessed using the code, they need to go directly to the satellite and break its antenna manually. While Jet and Spike are away, Ed tells Faye he can prove the culprit is the satellite and not the hacker in exchange for a promise Faye accepts. Spike identifies the satellite in space and shoots at it, but misses. But the satellite identifies them by using all of the surrounding satellites, which start attacking them with laser beams. The battle seems pointless once Ed suggests Faye be the decoy while Spike goes to the satellite. Ed's plan works, and he tells MPU to let Spike copy him, to which he agrees. Ed and Jet take the copied AI to the police for their bounty and then return. On Earth, Ed waits for the Bebop to come to her. Jet and Faye ignore her and start to fly away, but Ed hacks their spaceship and brings them to her, all thanks to Faye, who had promised to let her become a member of the Bebop. On the Big Shot show, it's announced that a reward on the satellite cannot be given because a bounty is given to living beings, which throws all of their efforts to waste and lands them a new member, Ed. And that brings us to the end of Act 1 of Cowboy Bebop. If you want to see the Bebop's crew members assembled for Part 2, remember to like this video, subscribe to Panorama Anime, and leave a comment for Act 2.